This is Deadzone the podcast presents
Warzone Eternal.
Welcome to the Deadzone podcast. Deadzone is the sci-fi tabletop.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Warzone Eternal. I am your host, Rick, and I'm here with
Alex
and
Ricktok.
How are you guys doing?
Awesome.
Have you gotten some sleep?
Yeah, I think that's actually the only thing I've been doing.
You look like you've gotten some sleep because the last time you and I chatted, just a couple days ago,
yeah,
you were like, his hair was all like, when the video popped up and he's like, I was like, whoa.
Yeah, no, it's been, 5 days?
Yes, 5 days since it ended.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that happened right after, right? Like, here's emails you should send to your backers, and this is how long it's going to take for funds to show up.
Yeah.
And just boom, 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 boom. Here's your marketing bill. Here's your,
all that behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So a ton of stuff, but yeah, no, other than playing Diablo 4, I have
Everybody is playing Diablo 4 right now. I am not.
I've gotten some sleep, and I feel rejuvenated and excited and ready for the next stage of the Warzone Eternal project, and excited to be here.
So what did the Kickstarter end at?
162 and some change.
Very nice.
Yeah, no, so we were at, I think, 233% of our funding goal. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It was a lot of fun watching the interactions, and it was fun watching. Like, I know we talked about the whole, what are they called when they open up?
Stretch goals.
Stretch goals. Like, you didn't want a lot of that whole stretch goal game that some of the Kickstarters have. But what you released, like, people were like fighting to get what's next. Yeah. And then they'd see it and it was like, that's awesome. Yeah. Like, the amount of people that talked about your miniatures and the way they looked and how excited they were about that was huge from what we talked about before, where you stopped it before and came back and said, no, we're doing it better.
Yeah. I mean, there were a couple people, and I realize preferences are always going to be personal, but there were a couple people who said, right, these are the best iterations of what they feel Warzone miniatures should look like that they've ever seen. And as someone who, right, this project is super... this is
a passion project.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's super personal, super important to me. To hear people say, like, man, you hit the vibe exactly right. I mean, that's exactly
that's got to be an awesome feeling.
It was absolutely incredible.
And then we point at the people that say the word vibe and go, millennial. I'm kidding.
I'm not a millennial. I'm not that young.
No.
Thanks for reminding that there are no millennials in this room.
Oh. Are there not?
No.
We are too old for that.
No, like you said, watching the progression of the Kickstarter from beginning to end was kind of fun too.
Yeah.
Not just with the stretch goals that kept opening up and how they were just ravenous and rabid about what was next.
Yeah.
But like the last 72 hours on that Kickstarter was a lot of fun.
It was. Yeah, I mean, Kickstarters traditionally have always had that kind of bell curve shape, right? And so now last year, right, when we decided to cancel the Kickstarter, one of the things that I had noticed in doing research for other projects that were running contemporaneously or just prior was that we just weren't seeing that last 72 uptick.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I had no way of knowing whether or not we were going to experience any of that. And so we were stuck for a couple days at a funding level where they could see, the Nephirite of Elgaroth, and they're like, we want that, we want that, we want that, but we just weren't making much progress, and then we hit that last 72-hour mark, and it's like people realize, okay, yep, I got to make the decision: am I going to participate or I'm not going to? And we not only did we blow past him, right? I had to come up with a couple more stretch goals.
Yep.
So for me, when I talk about the things that I enjoyed watching, was watching like your hairline recede a little bit, the gray come in, right, as we chat and such.
Oh yeah,
seeing all that's what I enjoyed, right? So when I say last 72, yeah. Yeah,
he means the 72 hours I lost from my life.
That was, you just lost 1 year.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
So what I enjoyed watching on the social media platforms was, well, crap, now I got to go back and I got to change my backing. I need that, and that. And I'm like, nice.
Yeah.
Because it was funny because they were like, okay, I was going to go Mishima. Nope. Now I'm going Cybertronic.
Yeah, those Cybertronic
now,
look so good.
Now I'm just going to go for all of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we ended up with an average pledge level, suggesting that everybody was probably picking up the rulebook, 2 starter boxes, and then a couple units to support those starter boxes. Or they intend in the pledge manager to pick just a bunch of starter boxes for 2 factions. But so overall the funding level per backer was good, and it was at a level again that kind of suggests some sustainability, right?
Yeah,
People getting enough stuff that they and a buddy can play.
Yeah.
And that's that's really the goal, right? Is to
and that's what you wanted, was just people to play Warzone Eternal, because
100%. I mean, or just the goal to get the game produced and have enough other people who like what we're doing that want to play the game with me, right? And that's kind of what it is, right? Is that I would have been more than happy if I could have just had a whole bunch of bespoke Warzone miniatures sculpted and had a really amazing collection. The fact that we're doing something that allows other people to participate in that and creates a foundation for a game to grow is just icing. We're looking forward to the conventions we'll be attending. Especially once we start fulfilling. Yeah. Right. I mean, if we're able to beat our scheduled goal and we've got fulfillment starting, or at least partially done by the time Adepticon rolls around next year, that's going to be amazing.
Oh my God. I can't even think about what that's going to look like.
Yeah, definitely.
Because obviously you've already paid for your booth.
Yeah. We'll be there.
Right?
You're going to be there.
So we're going to be there.
Yep, exactly.
All right, so the booth will be set up, but if people already have product in hand.
Yeah.
And
that's going to be amazing.
Think about the events, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
You're gonna be torn, bro. Are you gonna go do the Mantic room, or are you gonna come down and do Warzone?
That's tough. That's tough.
Right? Are you gonna be splitting your time, right? And then Ronnie Renton is gonna be like, "Hey, what's going on?"
Hey. Rick, I just want to make it clear, I'm not trying to create divided loyalty for you. Leave that up to Ricktok to be.
I mean,
that's what he does, right? I mean, that's what he does.
Ronnie is going to be like, he come down to the booth, he's going to be like, Alex, mate, you know what? What are you doing? I've got all these people that I've relied upon for all these years. You're an Adepticon, and you're just stealing them from me. All right?
Well,
that's my best British accent.
It was not bad. Well, actually, for all of our British listeners, if that was a bad accent, we apologize.
It was an accident.
It was an accident.
Right.
Well, it's funny because it's not really, like, for me personally, it's not actually dividing. It's like blowing it up. Because when you brought me onto this and we started talking about doing the podcast episodes and getting in on the playtesting and getting involved, it blew my mind to be at literally the ground floor and working up, and then obviously going all the way to this point where the Kickstarter is successful. Now it's, what do we do next?
Yeah.
At the same time, I'm over here doing 10 years we're celebrating 10 years this year for Deadzone the podcast.
Nerds.
Maybe. And Brian and I are just bubbling at the seams with excitement for all of it.
Well, and I think that, so then you become a perfect example of really my perspective on the miniatures gaming market and hobby anyways, right? Which is there is room.
Oh, there's plenty of room
for more companies. There's opportunities for people to play multiple games.
Yep.
I mean, I have...
It doesn't hurt that Warzone Eternal and Deadzone are both sci-fi skirmish games, but yeah.
But I think it also, because they're both sci-fi skirmish games, it means that there's enough room in your collection for both.
Yes.
And they both give you different experiences.
Oh, yeah, they play completely different.
Right. So
and they're both super enjoyable.
Exactly. So there you've got the opportunity now to play two different games with a collection that is much smaller than what it takes to play other games.
Yes. And so last time we got to sit there and play a game. I now know what Brian feels like with having horrible dice rolls. Because Brian rolls like that when he plays me Deadzone.
Okay.
Like, he always has horrible rolls. And now I know the feeling.
Yeah, you still came away with a victory, though.
I did, because you didn't play the objectives.
Yeah, I know. Brotherhood, overzealous.
So what's next as far as the Kickstarter? The Pledge Manager comes out?
So...
Do you have that information yet?
Unfortunately, the Pledge Manager doesn't just come out.
Yeah.
The Pledge Manager has to be built.
So
that doesn't... We don't even begin working on that, right?
Okay.
Until things like the Kickstarter backer reports are produced, right? Yeah. And so we're at a point right now where there are a certain number of people who, because of credit cards that have expired or so there's a number of backers, right, who their pledges haven't been processed.
Okay.
And so we don't even have an actual backer count yet, right? Because all of those, if they can't be processed, Kickstarter will just cancel the pledges, and unfortunately they don't get a chance to participate in the campaign.
Sure.
So once we've got that, once the money has been transferred, minus the Kickstarter fees and the credit processing fees and everything, then we start working on the Pledge Manager.
And I think, and this is that part that I don't think backers actually understand when they're like, okay, the Kickstarter is done. Where's my backer? I want a Pledge Manager so I can do this and I can do this. It's like, there's actually a lot going on.
Well, yeah, I mean, so you think about, we started out with a pretty constrained Kickstarter, right? Here are the pledge levels, and the only things that really mattered were you were going to have to select which starter boxes you wanted. Yeah, that was it. And then we started hitting stretch goals, so now we've got add-ons, and the add-ons are unit boxes for each faction, and single models for each faction, and dice, and we got a T-shirt, and extra copies of the rule books, and acrylic markers, and
short stories.
The short story compilation, the decals from Death Ray Design. So we've got all of those things. Those are all now add-ons that all have to be built into the Pledge Manager so people can select them. Yeah. And because a lot of people wanted to be able to switch the contents of their pledges, we've also got to build in there the functionality to allow people to say, I don't want my pledge rewards.
I want this instead.
And then it basically rejects it, and then the amount of money they pledge just becomes credit.
Yeah. Credit
they can
to
then use to
put
pick
towards
additional
sure.
stuff. Yeah. Yep. And so all of that stuff, right, BackerKit has a system. Mm-hmm. So you have to work within that system, meaning that all of that functionality, you have to figure out a way to make BackerKit allow that to happen. Right. Right.
So it's a lot.
Yeah, so there's a level of construction there, some consideration before you start messing with things. Yeah. The BattleTech Mercenaries Kickstarter, they had a situation where, the add-ons that people selected in Kickstarter, those were locked. So when they went into BackerKit, those add-ons were in there and they couldn't remove them. So if somebody had changed their mind,
they were stuck.
Yeah, so they've had to figure out ways to make that work. Yeah. And so similarly for us, we know that there are going to be people who are going to say, "I'd really like to get something else. So can we make that happen?"
Okay. Right.
So the creation of the Pledge Manager is going to start in the next couple weeks.
Okay.
Wow. And that'll be a significant task. We've also I've had a conversation with our miniatures production partner.
All right.
And so, he's got files. We're going to spend probably the next 2 months going through. So everyone's seen the prototype STLs.
Yes.
Right? They've seen the prototypes that we've printed off and painted, used for demos or battle reports. Now we need to go and do the pre-production review, right?
Oh, okay.
The models, like where are things that are too thin, that they're not going to cast well? Where do we have voids inside of a digital file that need to be backfilled? All of those things. And then, where the cut line is going to be so that they fit in the molds.
Yeah.
So all that stuff has to be done. So the hope is that we've got all that wrapped up by the end of the summer.
Okay.
So that come, early fall, we're literally doing nothing but just
churning.
Pushing molds through the COcast machine.
Right.
Nice.
And if we can do that, then we'll be on a really good pace.
Awesome.
But yeah, Ricktok has put me in contact with a guy to talk about packaging. Right, this other stuff I've had to learn. Like, okay, great, here are miniatures. I'm not just going to give you a baggie full of miniatures, right? Packaging has to happen. So what is that going to look like, and how do we source it?
Right.
We have retail backers who are going to want stuff that they can put on the shelf.
On the shelf, yeah.
So again, we can't just send them a bag full of miniatures.
It doesn't work.
Right. So yeah, all of those kind of things now happen while we're also working on finalizing the rules, right? We've got we've got the rules to a point where we're playing games and they're not going to change, but little things like, is the recoil modifier in a Southpaw RPG, is that appropriate?
The balancing.
Right.
Freaking Southpaws.
Southpaws, exactly.
What's wrong with Southpaw?
Are you a lefty?
Yes.
I knew it.
What's wrong with Southpaws?
I didn't even think about that. We probably should have put the Southpaw rocket launcher in the models of the hands.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. But yeah, so working through that stuff. And then I've also already started talking to Anwar, our concept artist.
Okay.
And we've already started concepting designs for the post-Kickstarter miniatures. Because we got to get that stuff rolling.
Yeah.
People have seen the proof of concept Imperial Wolfbane that we did. We need to turn the proof of concept into an actual unit of models.
Yeah.
So we've got
a lot still to do.
A lot to do, but it's actually the part that I enjoy more, right?
Okay.
Which is just the work.
Yeah.
Right? Get the stuff done. Figure out how to make it work and get it done.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I am as many of our supporters noted, the marketing and constantly answering questions and being on is just, it's not what I prefer. So now I'm going to do the stuff that I'm good at, and we're going to get a product produced for people.
Awesome.
Nice. Now, you mentioned something about a recoil on the Southpaw thing.
Yeah.
Does that affect what we're going to talk about next? Because
it doesn't.
I mean,
yes and no.
The attempted setup for a transition was good, but
thanks, man.
Not quite there.
Not quite there.
So
it's like a
could have been
lefty
there.
playing in a sport.
It could have been there. You could have been like, well, in regards to recoil,
Yeah, that's why I'm like,
and
I can't figure out how to do it.
And recoil, how it affects reaction.
Yeah. Well, taking the recoil negative modifier into account, when someone shoots at you, you may choose to dive for cover.
Nice.
I mean, that's a bit of a stretch.
It's a stretch. We're going to take a break real quick, and we'll come back and talk about reactions.
Nice.
This is Kevin Riddle, and you're listening to Deadzone the podcast. That's right, Riddle. Not Reedlay, not Reedla, not Rydell, not Riddell. Riddle. Just like it's spelled.
All right, welcome back.
That was awesome.
That was awesome. So, yeah, let's talk about reactions and how the reaction system work in the game.
Yeah.
That Southpaws need.
Yeah.
Right. Now that I know that there are Southpaw weapon systems with a recoil issue
In the right hand.
in the right hand. Well, in the right hands.
In the left hand, there's no recoil.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Snap.
I need all of those.
Yes. So recoil or reactions. So one of the things that we decided to do, right? Now a hallmark, right, of old school Warzone play was that you had alternating activations.
Yeah.
And at the time, in the mid to late 90s, there just weren't a lot of games out there doing it, right? It was, I activate my side, do everything with my force, and now you do everything with your force. And so having alternating activation meant that the game was significantly more engaging because the time between your turn was only a couple minutes.
Yeah, instead of go over, read a book.
Right, exactly.
While your opponent's doing his turn, yeah.
Yep, 100%. So one of the things that I brought up to Brian early on was I want a reaction mechanic. Because I want people to be engaged in the game.
The whole game.
All the time.
Yeah.
So even when it's your opponent's turn and they're activating their one model, or let's say they've got like trenchers and they're activating two, we want Trencher Dave.
All hail Trencher Dave.
we want the opportunity for you to still have something to do, potentially, right? And so we introduced a reaction mechanic. Now, the other thing we did is because Warzone Eternal only has 2 actions on average per model, we decided that the reaction replicated something from old school Warzone, right? There was what was known as a wait action.
Okay.
And what that basically meant was you spent an action on your turn to put a model on wait, and then you could potentially do something on an opponent's activation.
Sure.
But what it meant, right, was you're spending an action to do it, and then you'd have games where like everybody would
kind
be
of like holding your action in D&D.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
But you'd have games, right, where my entire squad. Okay, I'm going to move twice and then wait, and all these guys are on wait. Okay, well I'm going to move these 2 guys over here, take a shot. Now I'm going to wait, and so you had this constant
wait,
right,
wait,
and it was
wait.
This constant attempt to just get that perfect moment where you were at a slightly better advantage than your opponent, and then kind of all the dominoes fell. And that was fine, but it was contrary to the type of frenetic action I wanted in the game.
Yeah.
So the idea was, no, you get a reaction.
Yep.
So everyone has only got 2 actions. And that's something, right, that Chronopia, which was the fantasy sibling to Warzone back in the day,
Okay.
that's one of the things that they did, is they had a reduced action count, and it made the game move quicker.
Sure.
So 2 actions, but everyone's got a reaction. So,
and you have to, to have a reaction, you have to you have to, or once you've used your reaction, you don't get another one, or is there
for the turn?
Oh, for the turn. Okay.
Yep. So basically what happens is when you start your turn, all of your models are clear of any counters other than wounds, or if they're out of ammo or they're pinned. But as the turn progresses, when you activate a model, you put an activation counter on them. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Shows that they can't be activated again this turn. When you perform a reaction with a model, you place a reaction counter on them. Shows that they can't be reacted or cannot perform a reaction again. Now, there are ways to mess with that, right? Cybertronic, with their networked ability, allows you to potentially remove a reaction counter and put it on a friendly model so that original model can now react again. You're still limited to the fact that everyone's reacting once.
Because that other one is no longer able to react.
Exactly.
Yes,
exactly. So there are ways that reaction counters could be consumed that don't entail actually doing anything, right?
Now I want to play, Cybertronic.
Cybertronic is awesome.
Because that's the thing I do in other games is I'll be like, how can I? That guy's a lot closer, but he's already done the reaction. I'm going to go ahead and move that and allow him to do it.
Well, so I mean,
I like that.
When we introduce reactions and activations, obviously are part of the game always, but when we introduce reactions, what it did is it gave us another resource pool, and so it gives us another place to play, right? Because now we've got opportunities like we could have. Like, for instance, let's say we get to Mwahe, which is the Dark Legion.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You tell me, Rick.
I don't know. I don't know what that is, but this is one of this. So for everybody listening, before we started this podcast today, Alex had told Rick that he was going to put so much Mutant Chronicles knowledge in his brain that he will wake up in the middle of the night and be like, Mishima. Right? And that was a moment where I was
that was completely that moment.
He's literally laser eyeing you with information. Right?
So Mwahe is one of the Dark Legion apostles, right?
Okay.
So in Warzone Eternal, the Kickstarter, we have Elgaroth. And Elgaroth is the most warlike of the apostles, so it's the one that makes the most sense to be in the Kickstarter to start with. Moahe is the Dark Legion Apostle of like madness, right?
Nice.
So we could introduce a mechanic, for instance, that would allow somebody to force a reaction counter on a enemy model, therefore preventing them from being able to react.
Yeah.
Right. So it gives us another resource that we can do things with, and that was what we wanted to do. Is we don't want a massively broad system that you have to learn all these subsystems.
Yeah.
We wanted to be able to create a number of core components to this game that we could then mess with.
Right. Well, now that I don't know all these,
He's gonna be waking up going, Mishima.
what I'm imagining is if that particular disciple has troops on the field and they're like, no, you're gonna get a reaction token. Yep. Well, they should be able to do something with it, in that reaction. Yeah, you have to attack the closest model to you.
Sure.
Because that's madness.
Yep.
Right. And that could be a friendly model, friendly fire. I'm like,
yep.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, we're doing that and we're not creating a new resource to enable that. It's something has to be paid in order to do this.
A debt.
Right.
So in Warzone Eternal, what are the reactions that you can take?
Yeah, so there are 4 reactions.
Okay.
The first one is let's do the most complicated one, right?
You need to start with ambush.
So ambush is for people who've played other tactical miniatures games with reaction type systems. Ambush is the classic. I'm going to interrupt you as you're moving across this open field, and I'm going to shoot you in the middle of your action.
Nice.
Now that's a really powerful ability. Right. So in order to perform an ambush, you have to actually expend both your activation and your reaction counter.
Okay.
So if you have
you're done.
Yeah, so if you activated that model, it doesn't matter that he doesn't have a reaction counter on him. He still can't ambush.
Right.
So you have to really make use of that at the right time because you are foregoing that model's activation that turn.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, if you don't want to do that and you're willing to, let's say somebody shoots at you,
potentially survive,
you can choose to counterattack. And so that expends your reaction counter or places a reaction counter on the model, and after the enemy's attack action has been resolved
and you're still alive,
you can then counterattack and so perform an attack out of sequence.
Okay. Which for me, I really like that part of it because in some games I've played where, okay, you're going to shoot at me. Okay, I decide I'm going to shoot back at you.
Right.
And I kill you, so I don't take anything.
Right.
Well, that's not really how it should work. I like how this system is like, okay, if I survive, I get to shoot back at you.
Right.
I like that part of that mechanic.
But let me visualize this out. So if I'm running across a field to get to another point, right? And in mid run, you're like, I'm gonna snipe this cat. Who's this fool wandering around the field? I'm gonna put him out. Bam, smack.
Ambush.
I survived the ambush. You get your reaction token, right? I can then react to that firing, right?
You can
as a reaction.
You can only react when you are not the active player.
Oh,
so if you've got a model activated and you're running, and somebody ambushes you, you cannot then counterattack with that model because then you end up with this crazy scenario where, okay, I'm going to do this. I shoot at you. I'm going to react. Oh, I'm going to react to your reaction.
It becomes a Magic the Gathering stack.
Yeah, and so you could potentially have like everyone on the table all looking and have line of sight, so they all start reacting back and forth. So
that's a real thing, though.
Oh, sure.
In real war.
Oh, no, it is 100%. But right, like I mean, with all games like this, with all simulations, there's a certain level of abstraction you just have to accept.
Oh no, of course.
So no, I mean
Ricktok, you are a master at skirmish games. So
no, I'm a master.
You totally get it
at Deadzone.
Now, I will say to that point, the very first iteration of Warzone Eternal included that exact mechanic.
Right.
So, and we were looking at it just saying, well, wait a minute. We potentially have just consumed every single reaction token in the board in one furious firefight.
Yeah, sounds amazing.
Yeah, well, it does, but for a different game.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we realized it didn't work there. So yeah, so there are a couple and so let's step back before we look at the 4 reactions. There are a couple universal rules. So you can only ever react when you are the reactive player, so not the active player.
Okay.
Yes.
You can never react if you've already had a reaction counter on you, unless you have a special rule that says otherwise. And only one reactive model can react to any trigger, meaning I can't have 2 models ambush you.
Right.
So, but if you were to move twice, then I could. You move once, this guy ambushes you. You survived. You move a second action, I'm going to ambush you with another model. Because those become two different things. Yep.
Okay, and that makes sense.
Yep. So only one reaction per triggering action.
And for everybody listening, I also want to apologize if I sound like Nick Frost from Hot Fuzz. You ever jump with 2 guns blazing in the air across a vehicle? Because that's what I sound like. I feel like I sound like I'm Nick Frost asking those kinds of questions, right? You ever just after a firefight lay down and shoot straight in the air because you're so angry? You know, would that be a reaction?
Hey, I think that would be a reaction to rolling a 20.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that might be your reaction.
Well.
So ambush is the most difficult.
Ambush simply because it costs the most, right?
Okay.
Your activation and your reaction, and there is a timing thing, right?
It's a very specific,
right? And so we had to include certain rules, like okay, what happens if like the active player is charging me, and I decide to shoot them, and they survive, right? Like, are they allowed to continue that charge? Now, if I'm the active model, I'm charging you,
right,
and Rick over here decides to ambush me and shoots me, can I then change the direction of my charge and go after him instead? So we had to, so it's the most complicated. That being said, when I say most complicated, it's literally like 2 paragraphs as opposed to a single paragraph.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like if in that scenario of a charge on a character, you're charging me, and
I jump in and I
ambushes and you survive. Why would you do that? Because now I can ambush you if you're line of sight.
Because there's only if it's a single action, right? So it's my charge action.
Right.
If he
It's
ambushes,
still his.
Charge is a one.
Charge is one action,
right? So, but a charge is.
So one, a charge is a movement.
So in that scenario,
but he has 2 actions.
He has 2 scenarios.
But if I get to him in that one action, then nobody can.
If he
can't ambush again.
If he charges you, and I decide to ambush him,
right,
and I get him pinned, he still has another action,
right, which he could then charge again. Right, and then charge you that, and then I could shoot.
Not when he's pinned.
Right now, he's pinned.
But yeah,
yeah. So we're getting into levels.
We really are. Like,
I mean, people will just need to look at the rules.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, so
all right.
No, the thing is, like, you might choose to charge him because he's ambushed. He's used his activation and reaction. He can't do anything for the rest of the turn. He's not going to be able to counterattack.
Right.
So it might make more sense to go attack him because if I don't kill him in my charge, I know he's not going to be able to attack me this turn.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we had to create rules that say like, okay, how do we resolve that situation?
Yeah.
Something like counterattack is significantly more straightforward. Whoever's attacking you, you can attack against them or make an attack against them once their attack action has been resolved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So those are the 2. So those are 2 of them. The third one is dive for cover.
Yay.
And so this is in response to being targeted by an enemy's shoot action.
Yep.
So either a direct fire, like somebody shooting with a rifle, or you get caught in an area of effect, like an explosion. Mm-hmm. Once that's happened, you can choose to dive for cover. This is, again, like there's always caveats, right? This is a scenario where you could have multiple models react to a single action, because if you have 3 models that are all hit by the same explosive template, they can all choose to dive for cover.
Okay, and that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so what that does is it gives you an armor bonus against that attack action. Mm-hmm. And we had played for a bit with actually moving the models. And then we just realized that, okay, it slows the game down and it creates gamey situations where people are like, oh, I dive for cover closer to the enemy. So now I'm in charge range next time.
Yep.
And that kind of stuff was just, it's
not needed.
And every single time we found ourselves in a situation where we realized that we were creating a rule that could create just enough ambiguity that people could argue, We struck it.
Yeah.
Because I want people playing the game. I don't want people
Arguing
looking at the
about
rules
rules
and trying to understand what it means.
Yeah.
So no, if you die for cover, you get an armor bonus. The net effect is the same. It increases your potential survivability. It's just a much cleaner, simpler mechanic.
Yeah.
And then the last one was Parting Blow. And that one is, anyone who's played a game, very familiar with the concept. You're engaged with somebody, base-to-base contact. They move away. You get to make a free attack on them as they attempt to do so.
Right on.
So those are the 4 reactions.
Hey, I'm Chopper.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Rob.
From Mobile Armor Radio.
And you are listening to Deadzone, the podcast with Rick and Brian in the morning.
Never heard of it.
I don't even know who those guys are.
I hit buttons the wrong way. It's not my deck. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Doing wonderful.
So that's the rundown of reactions for everybody.
Yep.
So unfortunately, we don't have Ricktok for another segue. But
might be for the better.
So I had a chance to play you.
Yep.
And we played. What did you bring again?
Brotherhood.
Yep. So Brotherhood, obviously, they're very against the Dark Legions and Agaroth, but there's some mistrust on some other of the factions, right?
Correct. Yeah.
One of those factions happens to be Mishima.
That is correct.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about Mishima?
Okay. So Mishima is the human megacorporation, kind of descended from East Asian region of what was once Earth.
Yeah.
Specifically centered around Japan and kind of the I don't want to say stereotype. So it's sort of kind of typecast,
sure,
feudal ancestry or feudal heritage
that
comes from that. So they very much took the idea of a samurai nobility and families that owe fealty to families above them and on and on and up. So they took that idea and kind of meshed it with the 1980s view on Japanese manufacturing and innovation to create this idea of the Mishima Corporation.
Okay.
So Mishima is led by the Overlord, who is the highest ranking member of the family.
Yeah.
And then underneath the Overlord are his 3 feuding siblings.
Okay.
And then below them, would be some high level ranking family member who owns some large corporation, who has a bunch of sub corporations underneath them, and down all the way to the lowest level person in the corporation. So everyone owes fealty to somebody other than the Overlord.
Yeah.
Now the Overlord is at this point rumored to be just some old man who lives on Luna, protected by 1,000 Hatamoto, and no one sees him, and he's purely ceremonial, and that all the power is actually held by his 3 siblings. Now, the nice thing is there's a lot of things that are unexplained in the background, so maybe he's far more involved than we actually know.
Yeah.
These are not holes that we intend to fill. Because the whole point, you leave a bunch of gray area and people get to do fun things in there. So your story is whatever the heck you want it to be.
Yeah.
So he has his 3 feuding siblings. Lord Moya. Oh man, now.
Luckily, he brought a book.
It's Moya, Maru, and Mariko. That's okay. I could not remember the last one. And so Moya, being the oldest of the siblings, is the lord of Mishima's holdings on Mercury. Mercury is the ancestral homeland for Mishima.
Okay.
Maru is the lord of Mishima's domains on Venus. And then Mariko is on Mars.
Okay.
And so Moya, the oldest in the territorial holdings of Mishima, on Mercury is the most powerful, or is kind of almost looked at as the de facto leader for the corporation at this point. Mariko is the least powerful. She's the farthest away from the home
Everything.
base. Yeah, and also like on a planet that is almost completely dominated by capital.
Yep.
So it's forced her, for instance, to have
Yeah.
a slightly better relationship with the Brotherhood.
Yes.
Whereas Moya can, maintain kind of the mystic traditions that Mishima has developed over the years, that the Brotherhood finds suspect, and he can lean on that, and lean on kind of the spiritual teachings that are unique to Mishima. So yeah, so it's a cool faction in that each one of these three siblings, approaches their relationship with the other corporations fundamentally differently. And in the past, right, they've introduced unit types that are kind of specific to each one of those three siblings.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know when we're going to get to that point, right? Because now you're really kind of diving into the weeds. You're creating specific unit types for specific sub-factions.
Yeah.
But the opportunity is there.
Yeah, and if I'm correct, you do have a little bit of that with Capital right now.
Well,
from a lore perspective.
Yeah. I mean, so we've got the Sunset Strikers,
which have a little bit of that ancestry knowledge.
Yep. So the Sunset Strikers are Capital's regiment that is housed on Mercury.
Yeah.
They protect the Capital interests there, and because of the lengthy period of time that they've been stationed there, they've taken on a number of the Mishiman traditions and cultures. And again, it depends on, we've talked about this before, it depends on which book you look at, which author was involved. But some say that, simply because of their respect for Mishima, they've adopted these traditions. Other sources have said that they saved one of the high-ranking lords from an assassination attempt, and therefore were bestowed the opportunity to carry ceremonial blades. But ultimately, Capital ends up being this... it's funny, right? So much of this stuff feels like it's pulled from some 1980s American Hollywood take on something.
Yep.
So the Sunset Strikers feel like some American ninja, right?
Yeah.
So they're your G.I. Joe guys who carry katanas along with their assault rifles.
Hey, it works.
Yeah.
It's cultural appropriation.
Exactly. Welcome.
Thank you.
How's it going, Jeff?
Good. How are you guys?
Good.
Good.
Hey, can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
$163,000! Holy crap! Congratulations.
Thanks, man. Thank you. Yes, we were talking about that before. That I only now do I look like somebody who has restored some level of sanity.
Yes, I can see that. Took a little while to wear off. I bet.
It did. Yeah, I was tired.
It's a lot of work, man.
It was, but yeah, no, it was awesome.
What a great payoff! Congrats, really.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah. So now the
real work begins. Right?
Yeah, but as we were saying
work
before,
you want.
The work that's interesting.
Yeah.
Right. It's the work of actually getting to create the thing.
Right.
That's the whole point of doing this, right? Was to create a thing, and so now we get to do that.
Yeah.
And
you have a thing.
Yeah, and hopefully, hopefully by the end of the summer, we've got a full manuscript, right? And so now we can print off a couple test copies and hold a rule book,
right?
And you should have the first kind of test casts done by early fall, so that we'll literally hold these are the models that people are going to get. And yeah, that's cool.
That's awesome.
It is.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Definitely looking forward to following your journey.
Yeah, it's.
Oh yeah.
Hopefully, it's a journey, right? I mean,
well, that's what you did this for, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, some people are, firmly convinced that this is going to be a
welcome to the Bahamas
short journey. Oh yeah, or that.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Not really sure that's how that works.
Yeah, guys, this is definitely not a thing that I did to become rich. So.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, 163 is great and all, but it doesn't go as far as it used to.
No, not at all.
But 163 is great for a passion project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where this is, and I can't wait to learn more about the lore and wake up in the middle of the night yelling something. I'm sure my wife wouldn't be excited about that.
Well, when you start screaming out, brotherhood psalms at night,
yeah, that could be dangerous.
Yeah, do not give your wife wife my phone number because I'm not accepting calls or blame for this. But yeah, no, I think
we'll blame Ricktok.
I think this is a great idea, right? Each one of these episodes, let's kind of dive into an area of lore that you're interested in, and we'll talk about it, help kind of flesh out this universe.
That works for me.
Sweet.
With that, we're gonna end it so Jeff and I can record another podcast. Thank you everybody for listening, and don't forget to follow us on all the social media platforms.